Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So in this video I'm going to be continuing my review of each of the engine swaps for Gran Turismo 7. This time continuing with something a little bit different, and in my opinion it's an engine swap that I've not really seen spoken about at all. So if you haven't guessed already, because it's so obscure and you might not even know about this one, this is the Honda 2 and 4 engine swap for the Honda S660. If you haven't known about this little car, in all honesty, it's a bit of a continuation of the Honda Beat. I'm pretty sure nearly everybody knows about that fantastic little key car. It almost feels like just a much more modern version, and overall it's a fantastic car in its own right. However, will the engine swap improve the car overall, or will it make it worse? Which does seem to be a bit of a, I guess, trend with some of the cars that, you know, no matter what you do to that engine swap, it's just going to be absolutely horrific no matter how many hours you spend tuning it. So just like with the Porsche video that we did previously, we're going to do the same here. We're going to get two versions of the standard car. So we're going to have the bog standard straight out of the dealership car, which will look like this, just like I said, red, straight out the dealership, no changes, no aero, anything like that, not even tyre changes. They're all going to be running the exact same tyres for each specific build. And then obviously we'll have the 2 and 4 powered engine in the back of an engine swap version, which will look just like this. As you can see, the only difference is it's a separate colour, just so it's easier to distinguish, obviously this one being in the light blue colour. But that is going to be it. Obviously the only difference is going to be the engine that's inside of it. So the red one will have the standard S660 engine in, and the blue one will have the 2 and 4 engine in. Now there is a few key differences, so let's go ahead and quickly take a look. So the first one you may notice on the swap, so this is some of the differences from putting one in. As you can see, I didn't have to buy mine, I did actually get one. It will go from turbocharged to naturally aspirated. The weight will go down 10 kilograms from 830 to 820. Power will go up from 63 on the standard to 211, and the cc's will go from the standard 700cc key car to 1000. So let's get straight into the lap for the standard version. So this is how you are going to buy the car at the factory. As you can see, I bought a brand new fresh car just to go ahead and do this. It runs on Comfort soft tyres, so overall they are a pretty terrible compound to be doing any driving on, especially at higher speeds. But realistically, you're not going to be getting up to those higher speeds in the standard version. As you can see, it barely reaches 100 miles per hour. Now obviously this is turbocharged. I mean, the turbo is not massive at all. To be honest, it doesn't really squeal at you or anything like that, but naturally this is turbocharged. It's a smaller block with a little turbo strapped to it, and it, you know, does its job just fine. It's fairly average in terms of key cars though. However, this is certainly, you know, showing the more modern side of those key cars. It certainly drives better as a standard car than something such as the, you know, Honda Beat or the Suzuki Cappuccino. It really is kind of the, I guess, go-to of the class if you want, you know, I guess the best performing one, which might sound very strange for key cars, but in all honesty this is kind of the benchmark in my honest opinion. Not like they can be really that quick or really that good at handling, but this is certainly showing the more modern side of those key cars. So overall it's done a decent lap so far. It's not extremely quick, as you can see. Going uphill it is kind of struggling. We're obviously on Autopolis short course, so we're going to go into the right hander here instead of going left, and it's then going to be down onto the straight. So again, overall comfort and handling is absolutely spot on. I really can't say that it's a difficult car to drive. Overall it is kind of let down by a lack of high speed, and a bit of those tires through the corners is, you know, rather not too fun. So let's go straight into the engine swap version, and the first thing you're going to notice is this thing is much quicker in a straight line, already topping out over 100 miles per hour in gear 3. The gear ratios are extremely long on this engine, so it definitely will need some more fine tuning. It's just not what I can do for these videos. Into the right hander, and as you're going to see, we're going to completely miss the apex this time. The car certainly likes to spin its wheels as it's going through the corners. Like I said, this is a lot of power to be putting through such a small car with no other modifications on it, and comfort soft tires. Just the comfort tires alone make this thing, you know, just not as good as it realistically could be. Now, in terms of what would sort this, if you didn't want to go over the top with modifications. Lower the ride height, and in all honesty, just put a diff on it, and overall some better compounder tyres, and I'm assuming most of these problems will just go away straight away. You know, even then, don't expect all your problems to just go right away. This is still a car that's essentially the size of a matchbox. It's not very heavy, it's very lightweight, and you're putting a ton of power through it. It really does kind of stress the car through the corners. But even with a decent bit of throttle control, even on the comforts, and you know, putting over 200 brake through it on a standard suspension and such, it really is actually quite controllable. It just likes the wheel spin on the exit and sort of do a bit of front wheel drive drifting through the corner. But overall, it was a decent lap. Much quicker, just certainly not as planted as this car realistically needs to be with this engine swap. So that's going to do it in a 126.673. So let's go and compare both of these standard cars with the swaps in. So as you can see, the S660 with the engine swap takes up to 490.43 performance points, and that did it in a 126.673. And the Honda S660 without the engine swap comes in at 345.03 performance points and did a lap time of 1 minute 40.357. They both get one single shot at an entire clean lap. It would only be an accident that would cause me to reset. So again, you're looking at around about 14 seconds on average in terms of overall lap times. It could possibly be a bit more if you can, you know, control the amount of power that's going through it. So it is quite a bit just on the standard car, but it certainly feels a lot less refined than it realistically needs to be able to put in decent, consistent lap times with that 2 and 4 powered engine in it. So we're not going to stop there in terms of reviews. We're going to go for a fully upgraded version of each car. So the one you're seeing here is the standard version. Again, this is going to be running all the modifications you can possibly get to get the maximum performance points on the standard engine. So it's allowed to run aero to obviously keep it sucked to the ground, suspension again to kind of, you know, lower it down, race exhaust, all that stuff, anything you can think of will be on this. Now obviously this is still turbocharged. Some things to note about this car is mainly the fact that it is essentially just a little go-kart. It does really handle very well, but its overall power isn't too much. As you can see, 160 brake horsepower, 595.26 pp. In terms of its displacement, it's exactly the same. It weighs a little bit less at 713 kilograms, and yeah, overall there's not kind of too many differences in these builds. The main key differences to note are the fact that one is NA and one is turbocharged, and there's going to be different permanent mods for each one. And obviously the overall power output of the 2 and 4 powered one is going to be a lot more. But let's see if realistically on a proper race circuit, will that actually help that car do any better? So this is going to be the one that we're going to be using for the 2 and 4 powered. As you can see, it's exactly the same in terms of its aero. There's no real changes. The thing is, with these cars, I cannot then go and edit or fine tune any of the parts. So what I'll do is I'll put all the modifications on to get it to that highest number, and then that's it. I can't touch them. You know, a lot of people may not tune the cars. A lot of people might not want to kind of deal with tuning cars. That is the reason why I've kind of left them off the kind of standard tuning sheet from whatever the parts are. So you know, hopefully that makes sense. But basically I cannot go in and fine tune. So here's the differences: 288 brake horsepower, it's still at 1000 cc, 703 kilograms, exactly the same. So it's just putting out a lot more power. It's naturally aspirated, and there's a few different changes in some of the parts. Like I said, with, you know, like anti-lag and such, we can't have anything like that on. There's no turbocharger option on the 2 and 4. So there's a few tiny differences, but again, that jump in power is a lot more. So from 160 brake horsepower all the way up to 288 brake horsepower. That's a bit of a difference in terms of, you know, overall output of power. This is 657.37 pp. So let's get on to the lap with the standard version first. So this has the normal engine in it. Again, same compounder tyres, all that stuff, maximum upgrades. And we're going to be doing this at the full layout of Suzuka. So we're obviously going to go into the right-hander here. Now, if you watch the gears on this car, they are very high. They're rather quite short gear ratios, which means we're going to be hitting the corners in much higher gears than you naturally would a lot of other cars. Now, another thing to note is just how fast you can actually take the corners in this thing. It really is a proper little go-kart, and instantly I felt comfortable throwing it through the corners. In fact, this is one car that I've never ever gone ahead and fully customized. It's actually the car I used for one of the 1 hour missions, and then never really got round to increasing the output and all that kind of stuff. I just kind of left it for what it was for the longest time. So I've never really experienced this car in kind of its fully modified form, and I'm happy to report it's insanely good. The only downside is, like, if you clatter a curb like I did there and get a bit airborne, it will go a little bit unstable. But for such a small car, the aero and everything like that really does work to make this a proper little pocket rocket. I really cannot complain. And although the top speed is not as ridiculous as some of the cars in the game, the fact that it's just so small, so lightweight, and corners so quick, it really does feel like you're going much faster. So as you can see, it's not mind-blowing, hitting upwards of 120 miles per hour as we go into the left-hander here. So just over at 122, down a few gears. Again, you don't have to go up and down too many gears in this car, which is fantastic. Another good thing to note, obviously, with the engine being in the rear and this car basically being front wheel drive, it's a very easy to drive overall. Like, anybody could jump in this build and probably put in some very respectable lap times and have a ton of fun doing it. So again, we're going down the straight, we're hitting over 130 this time. We're going to get it a little bit wrong. This is where the car became a little bit unstable, again mainly just due to driver error. I was just completely lost concentration through there. And then we're going to go into the right hander and the left hander, up and over the curb, and again you can really throw this car through the corners. You can see it just leaning massively. So a very decent lap overall, a very enjoyable lap as well. So if you do want a car, overall with modifications that feels like an absolute go-kart and a pocket rocket, you really cannot go wrong with the standard version. So let's move on to the engine swapped version. Obviously this, as you can probably already tell, is going to be a bit more of a scary drive than the standard version. Again, the gear ratios seem insanely long in this car, only hitting 4th gear but hitting well over 150 miles per hour, closer towards 160 as we come into the first corner. Obviously we are going to have different braking zones and such like that, and going from one car to the other was a little bit different and a little bit scary, but overall you do kind of adjust very quickly. Now, one thing to note in terms of getting through the corners, it was a lot sketchier to get through the corners in the engine swapped version. So with the 2 and 4 engine, there's a lot more power going through this car, but again, surprisingly enough, this car can handle that amount of power rather quite easily. I certainly think this car is more for the tuner. Definitely someone that's not got experience in tuning cars on this game will probably, I'd assume, have a more difficult time overall than someone driving the more standard version. It's a lot more hairy. It will kind of wibble wobble and try and throw itself out of corners. But overall, if someone's able to tune a car quite confidently, you can probably get some very good tunes for this engine swap. So would I say this is more of a I guess anyone can go ahead and build this car? Probably not. You probably need a good, I guess, idea of what the tuning is like within Gran Turismo 7, where you can take advantage and such to really get the most out of this build. Like I said, I cannot touch them in terms of their standard form, but overall this is certainly a car with a ton of potential, and I could certainly see this being one of the strangest engine swaps. Do I think it's as good as something like proven like the K20 swapped Honda Beat? Maybe not just yet. Maybe time will tell. I might change my mind, but it is certainly still a very potent engine. It's a very good swap to do, and I certainly think in the right person's hand you could be getting some very good grinding builds going with this car. Overall, it's actually fantastic. It definitely takes a while to adjust to, and it's maybe not as beginner friendly as the standard version, but in all honesty, that's kind of a compliment. These aren't supposed to be the easiest cars to tune. They're under ultimate tuning at level 50 for a reason, and I certainly think you'll need to be a lot more confident to get a fairly decent tune coming with this one. So let's have a quick look at the overall lap times. As you can see, the Honda S660 with the engine swap comes in at 657.37 pp, racing softs for both of them, and that did it in a 208.311. A lot higher top speeds on this car. Again, a bit more sketchy through the corners, but that will just require a bit of fine tuning on your end, especially if you're a tuner. You're probably going to be in heaven with this build and be able to knock a ton of time off. And as you can see with the standard one, Again, it comes at 595.26 pp, so not too much of a difference, to be quite honest, in terms of fully upgraded, but there is a still fair bit of a gap. 215.410 for that car, so overall not too bad either way you go, but it certainly does seem like, especially at higher speed tracks, you're going to have a much better time with that 2 and 4 engine in there. So overall, what is my opinion? Is it worth doing this swap? Well, it retails at 600,000 credits, so it's not overall the cheapest engine swap in the game, but it's certainly not the most expensive, around about half the price of a 787B. If you've ever actually tried the 2 and 4 in terms of its Le Mans grind, it has a ton of potential, and it's a very, very good car for that grind. In fact, it was one of the first grinds I ever did around Le Mans, and it's a lot of people's go-to. So do I think you could get the S660 kind of up to that level? Perhaps not. That's a very specific car. Obviously, it's weird and wacky looks and pretty much weigh nothing, but you can definitely get a very good tune coming with this car. I certainly is going to be one that I will play around with for a long time to come, and overall it's just a very enjoyable engine swap. So my final thoughts on this obscure little engine swap: in all honesty, I would say it's worth it. If you've got 600,000 credits spare, it's really not that much for an engine swap. It's, you know, not in the high range, it's kind of sitting in that mid tier. Overall, because it's naturally aspirated, its fuel consumption is much better than I'd say with the turbocharged engine. The 2 and 4 engine overall is a very sturdy and reliable engine, able to output decent power. So I'd certainly say this engine swap is a decent time and something that you might want to look into. So that's going to be it from me today. Don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. I'll be testing out all of the engine swaps and giving my opinion within Gran Turismo 7. I'll have my Twitter and all that good stuff down in the description down below, and I will see you later on, guys. Take care. Peace.